Ryan, I'll hand it over to you to get us started.
Great. Perfect. Thank you, Katie. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our E-Rate FY22 and 23 webinar. We did one of these a few weeks ago, and it went very well, so we decided to do another one here today, and we appreciate you joining us. Once again with us, we have E-Rate Consulting, and in a few moments, I will introduce the folks from E-Rate Consulting, and we can jump into the webinar. If you have any questions as we go through the presentation, feel free to put them in the Q&A chat box. And at the end, we'll go through the questions and answers. If we run out of time, we'll do a follow-up, and I'll make sure to mention that at the end. So before we get started, I'll introduce us here at Aspire. So my name is Ryan Kastner. I'm an account executive at Aspire Technology Partners, and I focus in SLED, state and local government, and pertinent to today, education, particularly K-12 districts. So at Aspire Technology Partners, we're an advanced technology solutions and service providers. We have industry experts who partner with you to custom design, implement, and deliver highly complex yet simplified cross-architecture IT solutions. We have a host of managed services that provide you with the tools and expertise to facilitate your journey to digital transformation. So we're actually based in New Jersey. We're privately held and always will be. And we cater to our customers. So I mentioned that I serve the K-12 market. We have a large presence in the K-12 marketplace and are well-versed in assisting districts with E-Rate builds, purchases, et cetera. We help schools in many other ways. A big topic right now, of course, is cybersecurity, doing a lot of work in wireless, a lot in just general route switching. So if there's any area that we can help you, we're happy to bring in one of our experts to have a conversation. But again, today, we'll focus on E-Rate, which is one of our specialties. So with that, let me introduce the folks that are presenting with us here today. So again, I mentioned my name is Ryan Kastner, account executive with Aspire. My job is really just to kick things off, and I will hand it off to Geoff Sweeney with E-Rate Consulting, Chief Legal Officer, to introduce himself and Vince, and then talk a little bit about E-Rate Consulting before we jump in.
Thanks, Ryan. And thanks to Aspire for getting this information out there. Thanks to everybody for joining us. I know E-Rate is something that over the last 5 years or so has become extremely important and extremely well known as a valuable resource to help supplement the build out of your wireless internet infrastructure. So what we're going to do here is focus on some category 2 fundamentals, and then also some do's and don'ts, a little bit of information to help you understand how you can fit the E-Rate process into your existing business processes. So let's see, okay, how do we move slides? This is not my platform.
No problem. I'll get you here, Geoff.
Thanks. I appreciate that, Ryan. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
So what we're going to talk about first in this particular webinar is what is E-Rate. We'll talk about some of the timelines and the types of applications, and then also some changes in funding. And I'll give you some examples, and then we're gonna transition over to Vince, who's gonna help you understand some of the grant opportunities that are available to you, and how Cisco can help you better access those monies. So again, we're going to talk about some of the basics of Category 2 funding, but first we'll talk about our firm. Our firm was formed 22 years ago. We've been doing E-Rate compliance and process management services for over 20 years now. We're the chosen partner of the New Jersey School Boards Association to provide E-Rate compliance and process management services. We have actually over 170 clients nationwide now. And as a team, we have over 60 years of combined experience. We have 2 guys who work for us now who were formerly worked at the fund for over 15 years as application reviewers and compliance experts. And since 2015, which was when they released the second modernization order, making Category 2 funding available to everybody, we filed more than 1,000 Forms 471 and over 4,000 individual funding commitment requests. So we have ample experience with this program, and we do consider ourselves subject matter experts in E-Rate compliance. So the E-Rate program is a federal discount program. It's managed by the FCC. It's one of 4 programs from which the monies are drawn from the Universal Service Fund. The E-Rate program provides annual discounts on eligible products and services. So it is available to everybody, okay? It is available to all public school districts, public library systems, charter schools. It's not a competitive grant. So you do not have to submit any kind of paperwork in order to obtain access to this funding. And each E-rate funding year runs in lockstep with your fiscal year. Okay, so with the school year, July 1st to June 30th. So there's two categories of service. Category one, which we will not be discussing very much here, is your telecommunication services, internet and WAN, basically. Category two, we're going to focus on here, which is your internal connections, equipment, related licensing services, and then what's referred to as basic maintenance services, which is essentially warranties for your equipment, and then managed broadband services, which is essentially when you bring in an outside consultant to manage your network for you. So the application cycle, you apply annually for funding support. Okay, the application window essentially is from, let's say, like September until March. Okay, the Form 470 can be posted anytime from July 1st through really February. The Form 470 is your request for services. That's where you announce to the world what services you're looking to procure starting July 1st of the following year. When you post your 470, that triggers a mandatory 28-day competitive bidding period. If you award a contract within that 28-day period, it is automatically ineligible and you will not receive E-rate support. So once the 28-day competitive bidding period has run, you make an award, you file your Form 471. The Form 471 communicates your funding requests to USAC. Once you receive a funding commitment decision letter, you file your Form 486. And then at the end of the year or after you've completed the project, you will file either a BEAR form, which is your request for reimbursement if you pay your non-discounted portion of the project. And then there's also an invoicing method called the SPI method, which is where the service provider will go to USAC directly to receive the discounted portion. So category two encompasses the equipment and services necessary to distribute Wi-Fi internet connectivity to devices within your school buildings. Okay. It also includes managed network services, time and materials maintenance contracts, and stuff like that. But it's important to remember that category two, at present, the way the rules are written, focuses on distributing Wi-Fi internet connectivity within your school buildings. Okay, so if you're looking to install access points and have your Wi-Fi broadcast out into the community, technically speaking, those access points would not be eligible. With that being said, though, if you're installing outdoor access points for use at external areas of your school campuses or in the parking lot, that is eligible. Examples of eligible equipment include access points and controllers, switches, firewalls, routers, racks housing eligible equipment. So Cat 6 cabling, Cat 5 cabling, actually fiber projects are also eligible. Caching servers or software-defined caching servers, and then licensing, if you use a particular solution that requires licenses, those are eligible for support, as well as installation, configuration, and training. If you're installing a new solution and your team requires training, that can be eligible for E-rate support, as well as basic maintenance, which is the warranties and or time and materials contracts. Excuse me. So we're entering funding year 23-24, all right? And that's my fault for not updating this, but we're entering funding year 23-24. Now, the information here is all the same. So category two budgets were refreshed in 2021, okay? And that implemented a new 5-year budget cycle. They changed the rules in 2021 so that rather than have school-specific budgets and have a fluctuating per pupil multiplier each year, the per pupil multiplier is now fixed for your 5-year cycle. The current 5-year cycle will end in the 25-26 fiscal year at the end of that year. The per pupil multiplier is currently fixed at $167 per pupil, okay? So your category two budget for your district is your pupil enrollment times $167 in most cases. For schools with less than 150 pupils, you have a budget floor of $25,000. Previously, it was $9,800. We all know you can't do much in a building for $9,800. So USAC, after the pilot period, realized they needed to up that amount a little bit. And so now small schools have more money available to them. And they eliminated the equipment transfer rules under the previous regulatory framework, because now there's district-wide budgets as opposed to school-specific budgets. So they don't care where you move the equipment within your district. So notably, your enrollment figure and commensurately your C2 budget can remain static for the entire 5-year cycle. Okay, so if in 2021 you had an inordinately high enrollment, you can use that enrollment figure to calculate your Category 2 budget, and it can remain static for the entire 5-year cycle. Alternatively, you can verify your enrollment each year and update your enrollment in years where your enrollment increases. Okay, the only time you ever need to update your enrollment during this 5-year cycle is when it increases. Otherwise, you can leave it as is. With that being said, you must still provide your current enrollment and free and reduced figures every year, because what they do is they have 2 separate calculations that run in the system. They have your Category 2 budget calculation, which is based on that enrollment figure, and then they have your discount rate calculation. Your discount rate is calculated each year. Your Category 2 budget can remain static for the 5-year cycle. So this is just something to think about for those of you who have Category 2 projects outstanding or that are in their finishing stages. The FCC relaxed the service delivery deadline rules because of the continuing supply chain issues. So they granted a waiver and an extension of the service delivery deadline for Category 2 funding requests for the previous 3 E-rate application cycles. Okay, so now if you had a pending project from your 2020 application, 2021 application, or 2022 application, and you've had difficulty getting the equipment that you need or getting materials, getting anything, you have until September 30th of 2023 as the deadline for those projects now. You don't have to worry about filing extensions or anything like that. It's automatic. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So when we consult our clients, we like to present them with the idea that E-rate is not just an annual process. You need to have a long-term vision as well, right? And so what we recommend is a 5-year plan for success and then an annual plan as well. So this slide is going to cover the 5-year plan for success. And what we recommend doing is implementing a fixed hardware refresh cycle. So take a look at your district, the number of buildings that you have, the number of students that you have. Figure out what your needs are. If you can do an entire network refresh in 1 year, every 5 years, excellent. If you have to stagger it and spread it out over the course of 5 years, then you should do it that way. But it does require planning on your end so that you're not essentially filling in gaps as they arise, dealing with emergencies. You can prioritize your hardware needs, obviously, based on product life cycles and EOL schedules. And then, as we know, technical requirements and new product launches introduce us to new things on a monthly basis. And so, you know, a new product may come out and you think to yourself, oh, well, we're 18 months away from needing this type of product, but I'm going to make a note and I'm going to put this into my hardware refresh cycle so that in 18 months, when it's time for me to start examining new products, I'll know that I need to go back to this one and do some, maybe do a product demo or something like that. And then obviously, as we all know too, operating budgets change from year to year. State aid changes from year to year. So having this plan in place, it will allow you to make adjustments on the fly instead of having to plan on an annual basis. So identifying preferred part numbers and the associated requirements, right? You know, it's important to do that at the beginning so that you can identify what's going end of life and so that you can figure out exactly what is the best particular type of hardware for you to buy at any given moment in time. And then if it applies, you can evaluate alternative solutions early to ensure your 5-year plan accurately reflects your anticipated deployment, right? And by that, I mean, if you're a Cisco Meraki district and you're thinking to yourself, we may want to move over to Juniper or we may want to move over to HP, you're going to, and you have a staggered refresh cycle, you're going to need to plan for that, right? You're going to need to start in year 1 and understand that for a certain period of time, you're going to be managing 2 types of networks. But the better you plan, the better off you'll be. So your annual plan for success really entails focusing on the granular details of your Category 2 circumstances. So first and foremost, understand your Category 2 budget figure at the start of each fiscal year. This is a conversation for you to have with your consultant, okay? If you don't have a consultant, you can reach out to me and I can help you understand exactly where your C2 budget is and what other circumstances may actually increase it or decrease it under the circumstances. One of those is identifying pending projects from prior funding years, okay? If you have pending projects from prior funding years, those category 2 funds have already been allocated. If you're going to cancel a project, you have to file a Form 500 to return unused funding. That will replenish your C2 budget, okay? Complete any required product demos over the summer, or if you can do them before the summer, do that, because once the school year starts, product demos are technically a no-no. You can still do them provided you have not posted a Form 470, but a product demo cannot last for longer than 6 weeks. Otherwise, USAC will start to deem that demo unreasonably long. You're going to want to identify any required Cat6 cabling or fiber projects early on, okay? You should absolutely 100% do a walkthrough so that all interested vendors can come and assess the scope of the project. The last thing you want to do is put a cabling or fiber project out to bid without a walkthrough and with a non-specific scope of work, because essentially what you'll then get is bids that are all over the map and you'll be hammered with change orders when the project is ongoing. And most importantly, and this, all of these things really flow into this last bullet here, is speak to your consultant early and often, ensure you don't miss any deadlines. Do not trust your consultant to do everything right for you, okay? And that includes me. I think what's important is that you know every step of the way what's going on and you understand what's going on. You don't want them making decisions independently on your behalf. That's never how the consulting relationship should work. And that's how mistakes are made. So at invoicing time, so you can elect either the BEAR method or the SPI method. The BEAR method is the Billed Entity Applicant Reimbursement method. The SPI method is the Service Provider Invoicing method. BEAR is straight reimbursement. So if you're an 85% district, that means the program covers 85% of your project cost, okay? So in that particular, if you were electing the BEAR method, you would pay 100% of the project cost and then file a request for reimbursement from USAC, and they would pay you back your 85%, okay? If it's the SPI method, you would pay the vendor 15%. The vendor would then go to USAC to collect the 85% due. Vendors are obligated. That's actually a misprint. I apologize for that. They are obligated to offer SPI. So you can tell the vendor from the outset whether or not you want to use the BEAR or the SPI method. Under either method, invoices could be approved either in whole or in part. So a lot of times when vendors submit a bid, they do not specify how much of a particular part number may be ineligible. And in those circumstances, then when you go to collect your reimbursement, you may find out that you actually owe the vendor more because they didn't communicate the ineligibles to you clearly in their bid. Basic maintenance of internal connections must be invoiced monthly. So if you have a time and materials maintenance contract with a vendor, essentially you would just invoice USAC in the months that they perform work. You can only invoice USAC for work actually performed, as opposed to you cannot invoice, say, on a retainer. And what we always ask vendors to do is identify ineligibles on their quotes. So on the Form 470 and our specification documents, we say vendors must identify ineligibles on all quotes, okay? The reason for that is to properly set your expectations. The last thing you want to find out is that the firewall license that you were buying for $50,000 is actually only 30% eligible. Finding that out after the fact essentially means that you have to come up with an additional $30,000, which is obviously something that we'd all like to avoid. So the future of E-rate eligibility, there's ongoing conversations about school bus Wi-Fi. It will not be eligible in this upcoming E-rate cycle, but we do anticipate it will be in the next cycle. There's a strong push for that. And that obviously would require a rule change because the E-rate program is focused on distributing Wi-Fi connectivity within school buildings. If you're going to put it on school buses, essentially what you're doing is saying, okay, we're going to allow Wi-Fi outside the school buildings. It's going to require a shift in program focus. And then the big one is cybersecurity software, okay? When you buy an advanced security license for, say, a Cisco firewall, content filtering, malware, threat detection, none of those features within that software suite are eligible for E-rate support. They essentially look at eligibility for a firewall as the right to use license. That's essentially all that they will pay for. So what stakeholders and consultant in the consulting community and applicants are doing is they are lobbying the FCC to recognize that in the absence of these softwares, a firewall is not really that useful, and a school district can't operate the way that it's supposed to. And so they need to find more money for the program in order to pay for these for this software, because it ends up being a very, very large chunk of money each time you need to update your license. And that's it for me. So I'm going to turn this over to Vince from Cisco.
I appreciate it, Geoff, and good day, everybody. Again, Vince Siragusa here. I sit on the Cisco public funding team, and in a nutshell, we work to augment your alternative funding seeking strategy. So, Geoff, I like you hitting on kind of the 5-year, plan of attack with kind of long-term visibility and planning. And certainly, E-rate is a huge component of so many, internal pieces of networks, and where we can augment that with the applications, with the use cases, with the projects built on that E-rate network. It's kind of a perfect storm and really ties into kind of, again, that long-term visibility and really taking advantage of what funders have to offer, whether that's state, federal, at times local foundations. Certainly a lot of moving targets lately with some stimulus bills, which I'll hit on real quickly in just a moment. So on this end, we're really here again to augment your grant-seeking strategy, not to do anybody's job, not to step on toes, but hopefully uncover some hidden nuggets of information, maybe some programs that haven't been considered or haven't been thought about to date. And we do that through research, consultation. We can help with letters of support, at times letters of commitment, depending on what Cisco's role might be in the initiative itself. So really monitoring that funding landscape to kind of reinforce what's already targeted and hopefully enlighten around what we're seeing out there as well. The next slide kind of reinforces that with we're looking at least some of the programs out there. Geoff did a great job in the lower left with E-rate itself. Looking at the right, first program to call out, the RUS Distance Learning and Telemedicine Program. And this is not a holistic representation of everything that's out there. The goal on my end is, again, to work with all parts of the ecosystem, really understand what the pain points, what the project, what the need looks like, and then to align those needs and programmatic deliverables with the funding that's out there. So as an example of that, the RUS DLT, RUS standing for Rural Utility Services, DLT standing for Distance Learning and Telemedicine. That's a program that just opened up this morning, designed for video-enabled delivery of content to rural entities. So where that content starts really doesn't matter. It's where it ends up. So anybody working with various partners, whether across the state, across the county, across the country, really doesn't matter. Looking at sharing AP teachers or doing a workforce development initiative around mock job interviews, or maybe looking at a school-based health center model tying in with clinicians and physicians. Really no holds barred in terms of what that video can do, but the recipients principally have to be in rural and poor areas in as much as it makes sense for the project. And we can upscore that and kind of point in the right direction to make sure there is initiative, you're barking up the right tree there. And another example of a federal program that's recurring, comes out annually, certainly again tying in with that long-term kind of plan of attack when it comes to funding streams, comes the School Violence Prevention Program. This is a program that's been around for a number of years through the Department of Justice, and basically looking at, not from the network side, but physical security hardening. So door access control, emergency notification, video surveillance, collaboration between the school and first responders. Terrific program that's been around again for a number of years and is specifically designed for K-12. And then getting into some state-specific funding. New York State, for example, the Smart School Bond, I have a grant here, it's actually a bond program. That's one that's been around for a few years. New York State dedicated, there's probably roughly $300 million still left in that program. So if you're not familiar with that program in New York State and not aware of what you have left, that's a program that certainly augments and supplements E-rate quite well, along with more traditional physical security, community connectivity. There's a lot of other angles and avenues to take with that particular bond. A new program coming up in New Jersey. If you're in New Jersey, not monitoring the ROD grant, Regular Operating District grant, that's one that we haven't seen in at least a few years. Will be coming up and opening soon, I should say, excuse me. And looking at both the network infrastructure piece, similar to E-rate, as well as physical security and the necessary infrastructure there. So that's a program that I have high hopes for that should be out in the next few weeks, I would assume. And then PA is another example. They've a state-dedicated safe school targeted grant, which again is looking at physical security initiatives. And the next slide, just transitioning to kind of COVID. Obviously, we've had various arms of stimulus thus far. Most recently, the bipartisan infrastructure law, or bill, or IIJA, also known as. Wasn't a ton there for K through 12. So we revisit the previous 3 COVID-related funding streams, starting with CARES, then CRISA, then ARPA, comes the ESSER program, standing for Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief. The next slide here reinforces really the open-ended nature of what ESSER can do. This is a formula-based allocation. This is a snapshot from a few months ago, just giving an example of what districts have done across the country, looking at technology modernization, looking at educational technology, looking at engagements between teachers and students. And with the next slide, there's a lot of flexibility with this particular program. And in a nutshell, the program is designed for continuity of education, and they specifically call out educational technology and specifically call out advancing cybersecurity. So the limitations right now with E-rate can be met or offset at least with ESSER, which overtly calls out network security, principal need across the board. Seems like certainly the rising tide of nefarious actors isn't stopping anytime soon, and K-12, incredibly vulnerable population with a lot of needs on that network side, security side. So there's a program, and again, that's in many cases still available. And the next slide reinforces some of the reporting to date. And this is only through August, but just calling out 3 states. I think it's New York, then Jersey, then PA, I think is the order. Looking at the percentage spent. So a lot of CARES Act money has already been obligated and spent. We get into the second and third with CRISA and ARPA. Still a lot of percentage that's reported, or excuse me, a low percentage, I should say, reported spent, with obligation dates, with the second and third not happening until September of 2023 and then September of 2024. So the link at the bottom of the page here, if you're not familiar with ESSER and don't know, what money's been spent to date and what's left, that's a good program to at least get a handle on and reinforce with your finance department or your grants team or whoever's steering that money, because again, it incredibly flexible, incredibly open-ended, and with the limitations of E-rate as we sit today, this program really dovetails and complements well. So if there are questions and really any technology need and programmatic need in general districts are facing, here's a terrific program that in many cases still has dollar signs available and often in many other cases can fit neatly into what you're trying to do. So as questions pop up, you're looking again to identify what's out there. I'm eager to sit down, again, supplement what's going on. Reach out to anybody on the Aspire team. We are eager resources on this end and look forward to uncovering some buckets of money that haven't been considered to date. I do appreciate the time, everybody.
Thank you very much, Vince. Appreciate it. And thank you, Geoff. Great job as always. Fit a lot of information in a short time frame. So we hope the folks that joined us today got a lot out of this. As mentioned, a lot of information, right? So what we'll do is if you have any questions, feel free to send them our way. Since we've come up on our time, we'll do a follow-up. We'll send out any questions and answers from Geoff and Vince. And we also will send out a recording, and we can send you a PDF of the slides as well. So on the slide here you see, feel free to shoot an email to info@aspiretransforms.com. And for more information, you can visit our website at aspiretransforms.com. And as Vince mentioned, we are happy to make an introduction, bridge the gap to him and Geoff for any questions you have, or if you'd like to speak with them about anything at all. So thank you again, everybody. We appreciate your time and look forward to seeing you in our next educational program. Have a great rest of your day.